Thanks, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Welcome to the inaugural episode of Tabletop RPG Now. We're going to talk about a few things, most importantly, why tabletop RPGs in the modern day, 2015, when the concept we know today began in 1974. I'm your host, Dallas.
And I am his lovely co-host, Corey.
Lane co-host is what he meant. We're going to go with that. A little bit about myself first. So I've been gaming since 91, right? Tabletop gaming since 91. Probably have some camera issues. But no, I've been gaming since 91, and that says that I've been gaming for a little over 23 years, right? Why does that matter? I've predominantly played in the D&D universe, the different games, the different editions from AD&D Basic all the way to 5th edition through beta. Corey?
Hi.
How long have you been gaming now?
I've been gaming for all of 6 months.
Can I get another co-host? This is terrible. No. The reason why Corey and I decided to put this together is because we are polar opposite. I've been playing for 23 years. He's been playing for not even one. You were in RPGs before the last 6 months, right?
That's correct. I've been playing video games all of my life. I kind of grew up in the golden age of like the D&D RPG, like Baldur's Gate 2. Neverwinter Nights, Icewind Dale, all that good stuff. Planescape Tournament. Played them all.
Still a noob.
All awesome games. I highly recommend them.
So why would someone like yourself, who grew up in the golden age of the PC game, why would you kind of take a step back from the video games, the graphics, and all that stuff? You can roll over in your bed, open your laptop, log into World of Warcraft, Neverwinter, whatever, MechWarrior, whatever your game is. Why would you break away from all that and go to the difficulty of tabletop gaming?
Well, I have to disagree with you. I don't think it's a step back at all. It's definitely different. It's more tedious because you actually have to commit. You have to go drive somewhere and be with these assholes for like 48 hours, in a session, and listen to them do what they want instead of what you want. I mean,
Right.
Who wants that? No, but I played a lot of World of Warcraft and things of that nature. I've been gaming online my whole life, and I think that no matter what anyone says, it's a different experience to go out and meet people in person and kind of interact with them in person than on an online medium, whether it be like Roll20 or your guild in World of Warcraft. And 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 to kind of touch on like your graphics or whatever. I mean, your graphics are whatever's in your mind, man. Like if you can imagine it, then that's what it is, and nothing's ever going to really beat those graphics, in my opinion.
How did you pick up? I know you started with Roll20, but how did you pick up to your first tabletop game? How did that come about?
I used to live in Louisiana, and I was there when Katrina hit, and it kind of sent my friends and I kind of to separate corners of the states. We kind of keep in touch every now and then, but we were trying to look for something to do that we could kind of all commit to and just kind of hang out and have fun. And one of my friends suggested Pathfinder because we were looking at that in 3.5 because everybody was like, "Oh, if you play 4E, you're a douchebag,"
right?
And nobody wants anything to do with you.
Because you're not a nerd for playing Dungeons & Dragons in the first place, right? It's only if you play 4E. Remember that.
That's right. But anyway, we started to kind of getting on that, but due to our schedules, we could never really make it happen. So during that time, I discovered Roll20, and I kind of had some experiences with that. It was definitely it's a great application for DMs. I think for the players, it's a little bit more cutthroat because there's like 1,000 players to every one DM trying to find a game. So it encourages a lot of people to just apply for any game they can find until they join one. And it kind of is a lack of respect, in my opinion, on the DM trying to actually host the game that you don't really give a shit. You're just looking for anything to join. Uh, but that's besides the point. On Roll20, somebody mentioned that if you wanted to get, a real life group going, that you should go to meetup.com and start a group there or look for an
It's not a
existing group
dating
there.
website. I guess it could be.
I thought it was a dating website, as did everyone I've ever told it to. But it is not a dating website. It's a great site.
Very good.
Not even just for tabletop games, just for anything, any hobby you have. If you just want to go fucking watch movies with people, there's meetups for that. Uh, but anyway, I found out through there, and I'm fortunate to live in a big city like Houston, so I didn't really have any trouble kind of finding tabletop groups. I joined one immediately, was invited to a game, and then like a session later, I was invited to a second game. Then a few sessions later, I was invited to a third game because people just can't get enough of me, apparently.
Gotta have that one guy you kill off over and over, right?
That's right.
No, that's a very good point. I think Meetup.com is a really cool place for you to find other people like-minded with your hobbies. In today's episode, that happens to be with tabletop RPGs. In my experience through the ages of D&D, there's a great divide, and I'm going to try to sum this up to not take as much time on it. But there's your pre-third edition people.
Back in my day.
Right, back in my day. There's your pre-third edition people and your post-third edition people, right? So everyone knows third edition was the empowered gaming edition, and then some people prefer that, some people don't. We talked about this before. We're going to essentially leave fourth edition almost out of this today because it's almost not really the same thing. But pre third edition, between D&D Basic all the way to second edition revised, um, you on the higher points of it, we'll go with second edition revised. You acknowledge that with Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, the main difference they had was they split race and class, right? Which is that they didn't do that in D&D Basic. You either played a dwarf, an elf, a warrior. But once they separated it in Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, you got strong, but you got strong enough to acknowledge there were still certain things you still can't mess with, even at your best. Third edition changed all that. They were trying to appease the more modern gamer, and so you got something neat every level, and you got really strong. And it was a really good game on paper. Unfortunately, magical concepts allowed people to get really strong really fast, and if you didn't have a GM that really restricted or controlled player design, or excuse me, character design, you had a lot of broken characters if you played with that kind of person.
In that regard, how would you rate 5e? Because me being a new player, I kind of came into the game
Mhm.
in 5e beta, and then we moved on to the core when players came out. So that's literally the only version of D&D I've ever played.
Up until 5e, I would have said, second revised was probably my absolute favorite. And next, the D&D Next or 5e is really taking first place right now. And it's, you still get, the neat abilities every level, but you're still strong enough to understand that there are certain things you really can't mess with. Like every evolved edition beyond third, there are ways to quote unquote break the game, but any game is breakable. That's really up to your GM to decide and to fix and to make sure that that doesn't happen. Um, I think that I think that 5e has a lot of promise. I think it's going back to its roots in a lot of ways, and I think that it's still modern for a lot of your newer players. With 4e, which was the company trying to bait in the MMO players. The problem is you had so many item abilities, so many encounter abilities and dailies that each round, even if you knew what you were doing, took forever, and it really upset a lot of the older players. So with fifth edition, they're building something that's really good for everyone, I think. And I think it's a great addition for someone as green as yourself to come in on, right? Um, but to touch base on a few things, let's talk about tabletop RPGs in the sense of how group dynamic and game ending. So group dynamic. So you have your novelized games, the ones that unfold like a novel. You have your sandbox games where you can just kind of do whatever you want. You have your modules. There's those certain GMs that it's not in the module, it can't be done, right? None of those are right. None of those are wrong. It's just styles of play. If you're one of those guys that wants to download your favorite optimized character off the board, you probably shouldn't join a game that has a lot of story-driven characters who are not mechanically sound. Um, Not every tiefling needs to be a sorcerer or a warlock or paladin. Not every I don't even know the power builds, right?
You run into a lot of tiefling paladins in your day.
Here and there. So in the modern game. So the point is, if you're a power gamer, you probably shouldn't be with the story gamer. If you like the everything's fleshed out, everything's put in front of you, the GM is reading a module, and you know that he's not going to change anything in that module, then try to pick that game, because joining a game that doesn't fit your style is really going to hinder everyone's experience. It's not going to help yours at all. And more often than not, you'll probably be conflicting with your DM a little bit. Um, let's to jump off D&D for the moment and to talk about another tabletop RPG, an older one. Mech Warrior BattleTech's another one that I spent a lot of time with. If you have a game where if you have a group of players who want to play, but some can show up one day and some can't show up the next, and you need a scenario where you don't need everyone to show up because they can't make that commitment. Mech Warrior is a great game because you can have it to where so many people are sent off on missions and they're dropped off to do missions as needed, right? So if Corey doesn't show up for a game because he's drunk or whatever he's doing, he's off on another mission or he doesn't get dropped. So make sure that your system is efficient for the game you're running. I think that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say, like with your experience on D&D Next? You've played with. You said you were in 3 games tabletop, and those were 3 different DMs, 3 different GMs, whatever you want to call them.
That's right. There were 3 different DMs, and they were all with D&D Next. All of them, or 2 of them, were in the beta, and then I joined the third game right as the players was released. So we switched over to players at that point. Um,
So, to condense it, to mark it down as A, B, and C, right? DM A,
mhm.
B, and C. Let's talk about the pros and cons of each DM, and let's see if we can't come up with a couple of ideas for our DMs out there watching it on as what not to do or what to stay away from, as to what to try to stay close to. Um, so you're a new player.
That's right.
You've been playing roughly 6 months. These are your first 3 tabletop. RPGs through D&D Next, right?
That's
You had
right.
3 different DMs, 3 different experiences, and what time were you playing 3 different characters?
I was.
3 different characters. Well, so let's. What was your first character? DMA. Who were you playing with that?
I was playing a druid. This was my first game. I started off as a druid. Uh, his name was Alex, but I had to change his
Creative.
name. I had to change his name because apparently some of these other turds didn't like that because somebody else was named Alex in the group, and they couldn't keep them separated for some reason.
Maybe
Friggin'
pick a better name.
amateurs.
Yeah.
Friggin'
So,
amateurs.
so back to the question. So what happened to Alex? What happened in DMA's game?
Alex dies. Basically, DMA did some good stuff, some bad stuff. It honestly was a lot of bad stuff in that game. DMA has a ton of experience DMing. Like he's been playing for like 35 some odd years. The issue started to arise because we were moving into a new edition, and he didn't really research that. I don't think. On my first session, my first game, he kind of made my player the focus. and allowed me to RP a lot,
Fail.
which I did fantastically at. Um, I'll just have you know. Um, and it was fun, but things quickly got out of hand uh, because of the power spike in the game.
Yeah.
We were put against a monster that was too strong for us, and he was supposed to be like a hook for a quest, what I imagine. But he had built this all in with wishes, basically, so it did not end well for that guy. And quickly the game started to get derailed. Um, and the other issue was that the game's focus was a lot on my character. It was one of those, from level one, you have to go save the world from the dragon, or he's going to destroy the continent, yada yada yada. Issue was that I was told that my character had some secret knowledge, and under no circumstances would he tell. It was one of those things. They're like, under no circumstances would you ever tell anybody about this stuff.
So so let's touch base on DMA. So essentially, strong points. We talked about negative. Strong points would be what character story, world background. What were some strong points, or were
My
there any?
my favorite thing that DMA did is his NPCs had a lot of character. He liked to do voices for them, and I think that it was really fun to kind of just RP back and forth with his NPCs. Um, but honestly, that was really the strong point of his game, and I can't honestly think of any other strong points in the game. And to kind of go into another quote unquote flaw. Um, there was a huge issue
It's
with the
gonna be okay,
players.
man. It's gonna be okay. It's gonna be all right. There'll
one
be more.
one of the and this is how Alex died. It was a lack of description on his part. He's like, "Oh, you guys are in a bog, but here's water. Here's water to the side of you, and here's water behind you, right?"
So,
And, and then we get into this fight,
oh wow,
and like people are dropping left and right, and and
nobody's making draw checks, right?
that's right. And we had less characters this session, so the DMA decided that we needed the help of fairies, even though we were wrecking the enemy. By the way, uh, Entangle is so OP. Um, anyway, these fairies were going to intervene and save us, but we didn't really need saving, so we weren't worried about it. We weren't worried about the fairies per se. Uh, Long story short, fairies got pissed off at me and put me to sleep. And then I hit the floor, and I'm immediately making drown checks because the entire map is covered in water.
So, so look, we can take from this. We can take from this a couple of things from a DM perspective. Let's focus on if you're a DM. Don't be afraid to use character voices. Um, that's obviously a strong attribute for DM to have, right?
Right.
Um, let's also be consistent. Let's also be consistent. Make sure that your players know their terrain, know their areas, and what we talked about a little bit before with DMA was he took stuff away from the players, didn't he?
So he would kind of go and retroactively say that your character can't do such and such, or can't do such and such. Your ranger can't look for food or know what direction he's facing in the mountains. uh Me as a druid, I went into wild shape, and I was all of a sudden told, "Oh, you have to learn how to keep your mental stats." Things like that are never very fun. My second character in that game was a mage. I had the mage, played him for a month, and then
Rule change.
yeah, rule change. By the way, you have to start rolling for all your spells, and you got you have to roll like a DC 10. The rule changes don't matter. I don't care about that. I was mad because that's not something that we were told going into our classes, right? It was something that they were retroactively told as we were doing the actions we were doing.
So from a GM's perspective, listening to a player talk, um, this you're talking of a new player who doesn't have any back history. He doesn't have any favored ideas to expect from a GM. He doesn't really know what to expect from a GM, right?
Right.
But he has three GMs, and he knows from DM or GMA, these are the things that he liked about the game. These are the things he didn't like. So for you DMs out there, um, character voices is strong. Consistency with your rules is strong. Meaning, do not retroactive. If you're in beta and you switch to core, you switch systems, some rules are going to change, right? That's going to
Yeah,
happen. But
that's totally fair.
in going into a game from beta, going into core, you kind of acknowledge that a little bit, right? I know that in my game, a game that I've been running for over a year now, biweekly. One of the players from the beginning, he played a wizard. In beta, he played the Chanter Charmer. And when Core came out, he asked me. He said, "This is nothing like it was before. Do you mind if I change to Conjurationist? I know it's a little different from my backstory, but this is really nothing like it was before. And my whole battle tactic will have to change if I'm not able to go Conjurationist." And based on what he explained to me, I was more than okay with him because Beta was leaving. We were bringing in Core, and so sometimes things like that are going to happen. Okay, but to get back to DMA, let's talk about some of the things we didn't like. Again, changing rules as they come. Guys, you just can't do that, right? If someone plays a wizard, or if someone plays a ranger, and they want to be Strider, they want to be the woodland warrior, they want to track food, they want to be the guide, they want to be people, they want to be the person people come to for certain things, tracking. Maybe they're a boy or Fletcher. As a GM, you should know that, right? You should know that's what they're trying to do. Um, in a particular game that I was in when Core came out, um, I was told that my rogue could not disengage forward, right? Because I was disengaging towards the enemy. Webster's definition says that you can't disengage forward. It's disengaging is leaving, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the mechanical player's handbook definition of disengage is significantly different. It tells you that you are essentially utilizing your standard or in a row bonus action to fend off attacks, but it doesn't tell you can't go forward or backwards. So, guys, try to stay, even if you're going to change rules, make sure that the rule change is in the beginning and they're consistent. Let's talk about DMB now.
Okay. So a couple sessions into DMA's campaign, I got invited into DMB's campaign. DMB is a lot newer as a DM. I think he's been DMing for like one and a half years, something like that, and his games are like bi-weekly as well. So not really super long. And he wanted it to have a great story focused game. It was honestly another let's go save the world type game, which it's fine. And he tried to work in our backstories, and he did a little thing where we got bonus XP for posting stuff on the meetup boards, and so people were staying active with that and creating all this kind of backstory and side story, and he was real good about trying to implement that into his game somehow. Uh, where it fell apart again was in the combat side of things. Uh, he actually clearly stated on several occasions is that he doesn't care about the mechanics of the game. He just wants to tell a story. In my opinion, at its core, Dungeons and Dragons, any tabletop game is a game. It's freaking in the thing. It's a game, right? And games have rules and there's combat in it. If you just want to tell stories, you're gonna go tell a story to Dallas. You don't need a book for that. You don't need to pay $100 for that. You just go tell them a story. So we did have a lot of combat in that game. I'm not going to say that we didn't. It was just that I don't feel like he ever took the time to actually learn the ins and outs of the combat. He would just kind of throw monsters into the field. He wouldn't really read their abilities. We were in the start. He's a very creative person. He likes to create things, and this goes into the mechanics as well. He doesn't really know how to balance things. So he was giving us all these magical items in the beginning of the game, and then we became like ridiculously overpowered, and we're just mowing down whatever encounters we fought. Um, and that led to an issue. So we had to end up kind of retroing a bit, where like
Starting over.
yeah, we basically started the game over 10 years later. Um,
So guys, really quick, I'm gonna interrupt. I'm gonna interrupt. He doesn't have even a year of game time, so I can interrupt him. Um, as a GM, let's remember not not to implement. If you're jumping through world portals at level 2, what are you going to be doing at level 5, 10, and 20, right? So let's, as far as a game perspective, and yeah, I didn't really plan on. I don't think we plan on making such a big topic on certain tips and tricks for the GM, but I guess it's kind of important. So let's make sure. I'm not saying you more experienced GMs out there can't kind of sway from it, but it literally gives you a stepping stone, a written out example of what you should be doing. Was it 4 tiers?
yeah, in the player's handbook, I'm not sure about the older editions, but for 5e, the player's handbook, there's 4 tiers of play. Level, I'm not sure the level ranges, but the first tier is local quest, village or city. Then the second quest is or second tier is kingdom wide, right? And then third tier are quests that deal with continents and nations. And then your final epic tier is like all your world saving stuff, and like epic tier is like 17 to 20, right? That's really late in the
So
game.
so let's get rid of the Final Fantasy concept. You know what I mean? Like let's get rid of the you were born to save the world because this isn't a video game. There's no save and reset. You die. Um,
There's actually a couple of great games that are built upon that concept, right? Where everything's epic, and
sure.
I don't think that D&D is one of those games.
Yeah, I
I think that there's a
agree.
different system out there for you guys who want to try that stuff.
And to touch base on the overpowering, let's go back. I think to 2000 when D&D 3.0 came out, and then D&D 3.5 a little bit later. We were talking a
I
while
know
back.
exactly what he's talking about.
We were talking a while back about someone asked me what I thought of D&D 3.5, right? And your older players, they mumble, they turn their head, oh, it's a stupid edition. And it was a great edition. They corrected a lot of mistakes that needed to be corrected, but they overpowered. It was the first edition where the players were overpowered, right? Where the players got really really strong. And when I told you that initially, what did you tell me? When I said that it was kind of like playing Dragon Ball Z, right? You just die. I mean, dying, you just hit reset. Someone brings you back to life. It's not really all that special because at level 6 or 7, you can essentially walk through the game.
Hmm.
If you have one of those optimized board finders, right? Oh,
Right.
this sounds like a great build. And I run a biweekly game, and we don't have any of those in my game. They're all story driven. All story game's been going for a long time, and it's a pretty solid game. We're
Not to say that building optimized characters is a bad thing. It's just you have to know what kind of game you're in, right? You don't want to have one optimized character and then like five story
normal.
driven characters,
Hmm.
because then the DM's going to have to balance to your OPness, and everybody else is going to get
They're
destroyed.
going to get beat up. So before we continue back with DMB, I wanted to say that we were talking, and you said that having magic overpowered is more realistic, right?
Yeah, I think so. When you're, and it depends on what type of fantasy world that you're in, but D&D is typically, from what I gather, a high fantasy world.
Hmm.
And if you want to realistically portray a high fantasy world, you have a lot of magic, and when you have magic, magic is overpowering. You have your wizards who are going to destroy cities and capitals, all that stuff, whereas your fighters are fighters, like they're regular Joe fighter from medieval 1400 with a sword and board who's not really going to do much, right? Like if you're talking about pure realism, I think that sounds extremely realistic. Three where magic is super overpowering, but from the perspective of a game, it's not fun to limit half of your classes because something's so overpowering.
So to slightly disagree with the greenback over here, um, the reason why it's a problem is pre third edition. Your wizards, your casters, they had to cast spells, and if they were hit by anything in the round before it went off, they got disrupted or fizzled. So you had to have that big tough warrior stand in front of you so you could get your spells off, right? And in third edition, they implemented this unique thing, very unique, called concentration, which threw everything off.
So they had like a synergy in 2E where the classes kind of work together.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and then in 3A they just got rid of it.
Yeah, they just kind of got rid of that synergy that they needed, right? And then they started, to not get off on a tangent, but they were building a lot of they were building a lot of classes that weren't that were making other classes obsolete, and so they were really just oversaturating it, I think. But you watch every mythos is different. But if you watch Lord of the Rings, what's the greatest spell Gandalf casts? You know what? A protection spell against the Balrog.
He does that little light when
That's
he's
right.
charging his armies.
You know what I mean?
It kind of
Cast
breaks over his eyes a little bit.
Cast a daylight spell. This is like the greatest wizard in the world. And so when you look at some of the mechanics, guys, of and we're getting on the mechanics tangent because of the issues your DM A and B both had. When you look at, I think there was a Star Wars game. There was a tabletop version of Star Wars where Mace Windu was like level 13 or 14. Yoda was level 15 or 16 or 17 or something. The point is, guys, that they weren't level 25 and 30. Now, Forgotten Realms, Elementsters in the level 30s, they've kind of overdone all that, but I'm saying in your tabletop RPGs, you don't have to be max level to be powerful. You're recognized. If you go by the tier gameplay, you're recognized by the neighboring villages at level 3, level 4, level 6, level 7. The realm kind of knows who you are at that point, right? And now based on the story, right? If you were underground and you were locked in an underground cavern and you spent 10 years there, it's probably going to be a little different because the story's a little bit different than normal. So try to stay with the tiers for you newer DMs out there. For you guys newer to tabletop RPGs, don't be afraid to bust up in a module. I'm not the biggest module fan. I like to be a little bit more open, but once you get there, you'll be able to do the same. I think modules help you get a mechanical understanding of what combats are, what they're supposed to be. So continuing with DMB, getting back on subject here, it's his fault.
Old timers just drone on and on and on. Don't shut up.
Yeah, it's my fault. Right? Yeah.
So anyway, DMB had that big, we all basically had to reset the game. We got the option of, keeping our same characters and losing everything, or just recreating characters. I think everybody except one person just recreated characters. But it was obvious, I think, to everybody at that point that the DM was scared to introduce any more magic into the game because he didn't understand how to balance it at all. So we never got any more magical stuff. He felt like the cleric was the most overpowered thing in the game. So we all started seeing stuff that, your spells have a chance of failure, or this certain spell is nerfed now while you're in this area. And it was specifically targeted to the cleric, and he felt like that was unfair for him to continuously, be targeted like that with these, again, nerfs in the middle of the campaign.
So when you talk about nerfs in the campaign, how did that affect the character? What happened to the character? And this particular character who got nerfed, did he manage to endure it, prove durable, and survive, or did he get smoked? What happened?
Well, ironically enough, the DM didn't actually know how he was nerfing the character. So the nerf that he got was a little bit wrong and didn't really affect us a whole lot. Well, the first nerf did with the chance of spell failure. The second nerf really didn't. But then we fought a rock, and we were like level 6.
Oh wow!
and
you're talking about the giant bird of prey, the good stuff.
So we were kind of
never seen one of those killed, by the way. Never.
So we were fast forwarded through these mountains, right? We were kind of storyline through these mountains, and we ended up on this ledge. On the top of the highest peak. There's no escape anywhere. Only one of our characters had the ability to fly at the time because we're also I mean we're level 6. We're not super OP yet. Um, and then he's like, all right, guys, here's just a random encounter. He throws 6 griffins at us. You know, we blow some stuff, but we kind of manage them. While those griffins are attacking us, a rock lands. And
So you're not even full power when you're fighting this thing that's twice your level.
no. So the rock lands, and
Wow.
he goes after the cleric. The cleric was our tank at the time.
Someone take him out in the yard, or I mean, what that happened, man? That's bad. That's bad stuff.
So our cleric, being the tank, tried to tank the rock. You know, he had 19 AC, which is pretty good. You know,
Probably the highest AC in the group. Huh?
right. That's why he was a tank. He has like I think I had the next highest at 16, right? So he had 19 AC and like 50 HP at the time. And he dodged. And
So,
and
so hold on. For you guys who don't know what dodge means in 5e, it means systematically making 2 attacks towards the same AC, and you have to hit both times, right? You roll 2d20 and you take the weaker of the rolls.
right, exactly.
Okay. Just like having disadvantage.
So
It implies disadvantage.
yeah, mechanically it's disadvantage
Okay.
on that. Just for people who don't know yet. Basically, you just have to hit twice. On top of that, you cast a level 1 spell that clerics have called Sanctuary. And what Sanctuary does is it makes them make a Wisdom save of his spellcasting modifier to even be able to attack him. And I think his save was like a 16 or something.
Well, that's good.
So the rock gets like a 25 on the save. Then he gets like 27 and 30 on his attack rolls because the dude's got like a plus 13 to hit.
So he's got to roll a 6 to miss.
And he does, yeah, that's right. And he does, and he does like 70 something damage to him, one shots the dude.
So the cleric's gone.
We managed to kill the rock just with a burst of damage, but by that point the damage was done. We lost our character, and that actually caused the game to actually fall apart because it started an argument about the imbalanced encounter that we fought, and not that imbalanced encounters are wrong. Like
They have a place.
yeah, you can have overpowered encounters, but when you have an overpowered encounter where there's realistically no way that you can get away, then that's
when you're forced to fight the
I mean, we were forced, and it wasn't a boss feature. It was a fucking random encounter.
Just a random encounter. so let's player GM, right? DM, whatever I'm saying. I'm saying GM and DM. DM is more specific to Dungeons and Dragons, and GM is more as a game master overall. So I'm trying to respect everyone out there and their favorite games. But guys, whether you're story driven or mechanics driven, they are both equally as important, right?
Right.
Would you agree?
Like, I would even go one further and say, mechanics play into story. Like, if you have, playing games is about experience. It's about the experience of being there. You don't really hear a whole lot about, this epic time you had a conversation with an NPC in a bar. It's usually about, remember that time I fucking slayed that dragon, I had 1 HP, and I one-shotted that bitch?
I triple 20.
That's right.
Yeah.
He has a rule in his game where you get, 2 20s. You basically get a crit, and then you confirm the crit on another 20, and then if you hit them on the last one, then they just die.
It was an old school crit rule.
Yeah.
Which brings us back to consistency, right? One of the biggest issues I remember hearing about that game was the rules, again, like DMA, were inconsistent. So even if you have a rule in place that your players don't like, so long as it's consistent and they know it from the beginning, believe it or not, they will be a little bit more accepting, right? Mm-hmm. To go back before we go to your final DM. Before we go back to your final DM,
that's the worst one of them all.
I
could go on for an hour about
that's
that
right.
guy.
That's right. And he sucks in general.
That's right. He's just a shitty person.
That's right. Let's remember, guys, that you're talking about a person who it's his job to build the game. And it's up to him to have that game built. Now, he may need, some are going to need more prep time than others, right? Some can just sit down and run a game, and some need 2 or 3 weeks. Um, but it, one of the main reasons, again, we return back to why tabletop RPGs today, tomorrow, and not the video games, is because as a player, you get to build the character you want for the most part. I'm sure there's usually restrictions here and there depending on your game, but you get to build the character you want, and you help get to dictate the end of the story, right? So, if you are playing a group of characters and you either, just to make it, very basic, maybe you help free the ultimate bad guy who destroys the world. Maybe you help seal him away. So, but you get to make that decision, which is another huge reason to play the tabletop RPG because, I played a character one time where he had a backstory where he was wanted by bounty hunters for all this, bad stuff he did before. So the whole game we're being attacked by bounty hunters, and I'm having to explain to my players, my fellow comrades, why we're being attacked. And so if your GM is good enough to implement your backstory, it actually helps. It's kind of like writing a book. If you try to tell the story of your novel from point A to point B, it's not going to be very big. A lot of your story is filler, right?
Mm-hmm.
And as a GM, you can get that filler from the backstory that your players submit, right? So pay attention to your character's backstory, guys, and let's try to use that filler so we can help flesh out some characters so every barbarian they play isn't the same, as well as getting to the end game just the same.
And to kind of continue on with mechanics being part of the story, it's so like to take the monsters again for an example. Every encounter is its own little story. The monsters you fight, they have their own ecology, they have their own likes, dislikes. They have their own things that they're good at and they're bad at. And each one like is his own little story, and you don't need to have some epic sprawling thing where you go
Right.
save the princess, fuck the princess, uh, slay the dragon, all that stuff. Like each encounter is an encapsulated story in itself, and I think that great DMs utilize those encounters to tell great stories.
Let's move on to DMC. Um, uh, that's the game you joined last, correct?
It is. I joined that game exactly when players came out for 5e Players Handbook.
Okay.
Um, and DMC is sitting right here. It's actually Dallas. Um, he does a lot of things that I like, and he does a couple things that I disagree on.
It's because he's green.
uh, first off, there's a very kind of relaxed atmosphere. You can definitely tell that it's not players versus DMs. It's everybody working together to tell a cohesive story. That's not to say that he doesn't challenge the players on multiple occasions, because we're constantly challenged. But we have trust in him that he's not just gonna willy nilly kill us for no reason. Um, and one of the things that he does that I also like is it's just so hard to think of anything that you do that's actually good.
It's usually all bad, I
That's
think.
right. um, no, he tells a good story. He has his world set out in great detail, right? Like he has pages and pages and pages, history of this place, history of that place. It's all there, and it was all there from the beginning. So no matter like where we're from, what we're doing, they're all there. He's not really making up shit on the spot. He just has it in his head, and he has it on paper if we want to see it as well. I think that's a really cool thing to do. As far as preparation goes, and it really helps to lend to story creation, because it's very easy for him to say, "Oh, you wanted to make it an inquisitor? Okay, that fits perfect here.
Right. Right.
Boom, it's done." There's no real thinking involved on his part.
So to touch on that, know your setting, guys. Whatever your game is, whether it's BattleTech, Traveler, D&D. D&D has a plethora of worlds to choose from. Some people favor one over the other, or one time period over the other. Obviously, they're using the realms, Forgotten Realms, as their their flagship right now. For a while, it was Kryn, Dragonlance, and it goes on to all these different worlds you can use. But I chose to build my own world, and I spent a lot of time and many years trying to detail and outline it. You don't have to do that. You can build it as you go, right? So if you just need this one realm, the story takes place in this one city, and before the game's over, they're going to be into the small area of the realm. And that's what you need to flesh out. And maybe next time you do another one, and you can use the same world as far as like faiths and pantheons and things like that go. But know your realm, guys. Don't just kind of draw it as you go. Don't kind of just try to make it up as you go, because you're going to find there's going to be inconsistencies and plot holes,
Hmm.
which is going to tear apart your game, which is going to drive some people into saying, I should have just stayed home and logged in World of Warcraft, right? So
Right.
we don't want that. We're trying to keep the tabletop RPG alive. So continue.
And then one of the things that I dislike that he does, and I think this is kind of a relic of the older editions, is how he does things that forcefully impact the way you will play your character. Like, for an example, forced alignment changes. Like you have a lawful good guy one day, and then the next day he's chaotic evil, and it forces you to kind of completely change the way you view your character. And then another encounter we had was with a guy that aged you, and I realized that that's something that's always been around in the older editions. I don't see it in fifth edition. I do think there's a reason why, because you're taking away from you're basically forcing characters at that point to play things they don't want to necessarily play. Like when you age a warrior 60 years and she's now old age and has half the movement and you know
Maybe I
less
was
less
targeting a
strength.
girl, right?
Yeah,
Um,
it's just some woman you were targeting,
so
not who's not in the background at all.
let's take a lesson from that, right? So when you this kind of in a weird way kind of runs parallel to something you said about DMA, right? So is if someone plays a rogue assassin, or if someone plays an elven ranger, or whatever the case may be, just remember that the things you do to as a DM, you're not going to be perfect, but you're going to make when you make impactful things that hit them, whether they have the opportunity to change them or not. When you do things that change their character, they're no longer able to play the character that they created. Now, sometimes that's going to happen. Case in point would be what polymorph, right?
Right.
So like polymorph, true polymorph. There have always been things in the game that have changed your character, right? So, but just remember the effects of those things before you put them in the game. I think is the most
Right.
important
And
thing to take
I
from
think
that.
it also relies a lot on your players. Like some players may think that's awesome. Others may not want anyone fucking with how their characters are. That's just something again that goes with synergy with the group overall. You have to kind of know what your players are expecting out of this game and how they want to play.
And before we get to the mechanics portion of DMC, one of the things before he was in the game, I used to talk to him, and in every game you're in, the players talk about the DM, and you hear this guy favors this guy favors that girl, right? And I would tell Corey about it. Corey would tell me about it, or vice versa. John would tell Joe. Um, Guys, never favor. Just tell your story as best you can, right? As players, you play your character as best you can. Play your character. The characters should be played the way they should be played, right? If you're a coward, play a coward. If you're a DM, you DM the group. If you're going to kill the most instrumental person in your story in the game and he dies, and he dies, right? But that's what makes for really cool stories. Not character death, but the fact that sometimes things don't work out the way they're supposed to, right? So moving on to the last portion of DMC, the mechanics, right? So we've talked about you like the good backstories, you like the you like the I think you said implemented backstories in the world, or that stuff, the storytelling. What do you think of the mechanics per portion?
I think that he has a pretty good
DMC.
DMC. Sorry,
That's right.
has a pretty good understanding of the mechanics of the game, and it's kind of interesting because like I was playing in these multiple games at the same time, and even when all the DMs were learning the new system, he never really felt out of control. Like he always seemed like he kind of knew what it was because, and honestly, they kind of all go in patterns. You know, they're not going to drastically change all the rules
Right.
overnight,
Except for you.
except for you. Uh, you know, he has very interesting encounters because they're diverse, right? And they're not diverse necessarily monster wise. I mean, they are, but they don't even have to be. Like we go from four ogre mages to four ogre mages, and they'll feel like two different encounters completely because of the way that the map's set up. You know, the different strategies that they'll use. You know, the different motivations that they have in that battle. It definitely feels like a new encounter, like a brand new experience each time, as opposed to in some of these other games I was in, where it just feels like here is monster A, B, and C. They're all going to charge you until you're down, and then move on to the next person,
Right.
no
So
matter what monster it
so
is.
let's touch base on that, right? So on the advantage thing, guys, if there are orcs fighting for territory, they fight to the death, right? If they are outlaws and bandits, they're probably going to run. Um, if you want the bad guys to escape and they probably don't have the means to, and your party is the one that is going the kind that hunts them down, let them hunt them down. Maybe one day they're hunt them into a trap, right? Um, to touch base on the negative, right? The forced change. Tell us what you think. There was a point where Beta was switching to core, and it kind of landed perfectly. And there was right after they fought the this guy that aged them. Um, their essential bodies were destroyed. They were put into these soul stones.
Did not get aged one day. Only person in the party. Just want to throw it
Um,
out there.
but master tactics. But the point is, they were in a soul stone, right? And so they were in a soul stone for like 40 years when they came out. And but the point is, they were in these. They were actually socketed weapons into these newer to the main bad guy's weapons. They didn't destroy the main bad guy. They were actually serving as items for their champions, right? They eventually used their, I guess, old term ego and took over their bodies, destroyed their soul stones, forced the guys to fight, took over their bodies. Then they came back and beat the bad guys, and then they were living in the champions of the former main bad guy at the time. Their bodies. Okay, so the timing was pretty impeccable, and beta ended and core came out, and with that you saw a drastic change in the experience chart.
Mm-hmm.
Remember?
Yeah,
So level 9 in beta was not level 9 in core, so to speak.
that's right.
So what I did was I gave them an idea of the type of person that they were in, right? So you may have been a ranger, you may have been a human ranger before, but you were in the body of like the human priestess of since you guys don't know my world, we'll just say you were the human priestess of Bane or Cyric or something, right? Um, and so what I did, I allowed for everyone playing the game for a year in beta, I awarded them a free level, which was not something I normally do, but I was trying to even the experience out. So I just said, everyone jump to the next level, and that level goes into the level you watched your champion that you eventually stole their body. You take their one level in that. So you may be a level 10 or 9 barbarian, level 1 cleric now because you spent 40 years in an item that was used by this cleric champion. So, and being forced this way or that way did kind of force the alignments a little bit. Some people agree with it, some people don't agree with it. Tell us what you think. I'm the only one of the three DMs here, so I just wanted to give you an example of why we have polar opposites, right? We have greenback and we have the elite. Uh, he says old, I say elite, and whatever. But that's just an idea, right? So coming up on the 1 hour mark. Wow, we've been talking for a while. You're full of a lot of shit, man. You were full of a lot of shit.
This guy.
What talking about tabletop RPGs continuing and while we're continuing forward, let's talk about group dynamic, right? You were playing in Roll20, and then you moved to the three groups.
Yeah, I actually never got a game for Roll20 because I don't know if I said that, but it it's kind of not really a good experience for me because there's so many players to DMs that if you're not trying to DM a game, it's like every game's full that you want to join, and everybody's just clicking to apply for every single game out there, just because there's so few games available. And so I tried to actually GM a game, and I had all these people just
Pouring
apply.
in, yeah.
Yeah, and like 40 something people apply. I got a group together, and then half the people were like, "Oh, we found another game." You know, I'm like, "Well, that's not cool." Um, like, that was like before game day, so I was like, uh, you know, not the best thing. I think that Roll20 is good for for people that you do already know and that
Agreed.
you just can't meet up like in person. Like I was using the example of my friends who kind of moved all over. I think it's a great site for that. If I ever had the option, I would always choose meeting people in person though.
Right. So meeting people in person, you get the commitment, you get the friendship, you develop friendships with people, and you kind of learn to count on them, right? Roll20 is great if you a couple of friends of mine that I used to game with back in the '90s. One lives in Port Lavaca now. One lives in Arkansas. Guys, William and Winston, if you guys are watching, what's up, guys? Um, Roll20 would be a great idea if I wanted to game with these guys who already know how I play. I already know how they play, right?
Mhm.
Um, and they know that I'm really big on story. I'm really big on integrating backstories into your game. Guys, I can't stress that enough. Integrating backstories is the filler that makes the game worthwhile. But playing a game like Roll20 with these guys, guys I know, guys that know me, for example, or Corey, or whoever's running the game, seems like that's the most efficient way to use that system, right?
Mhm.
Um, let's jump off of tabletop RPGs for D&D for a second and go back into BattleTech Mech Warrior and Star Wars. So, talking about alignment before we go into our inclusive era, talking about alignment, Star Wars, unless the newer edition that I haven't seen has it, Star Wars never had alignment. And I can't tell you how many times I've seen players just kill each other because one guy has an idea, one guy has an idea, someone opens an airlock. You know what I mean? And it happens every time. You put yourself in a bad situation.
Mhm.
What were you going to say? You know, mouth off about my airlock story?
I was gonna say how many players have you killed
Um,
in these games
and in Star Wars?
in D&D?
And
Let's say for an example.
Carrie
and
doesn't count.
how many other players have you helped sabotage?
So in my Saturday game, guys, there's 8 players. One person died once. Alex Jr. died once,
And one person died like 8 times.
and but like 5 of them are like admittedly her fault, right? Like admittedly, right? Like
Right.
I mean, like 5 or 6 are admittedly her fault. So that's beside the point. Let's talk about alignment, guys. We got a little extra time, so we're gonna talk about alignment. Because when you pick an alignment for your character, or as a GM, I like to not have anyone pick an alignment unless they're like a paladin and they have to be lawful or something like that. They used to have to be lawful good, still a good rule to go by. But unless there's something that forces you to be one way or another, I don't think alignment is something you should get until second or third level. I think it's something that you should grow into because you don't really know your DM, you don't really know the story. Even if you know the DM, you don't really know the story, you don't really know what it's going to go, and you don't want to be safe, right? The safe route is what? Chaotic neutral. I'm going to be chaotic neutral. That way I can do whatever I want and I'm within the bounds of my alignment. So you don't always want to pick chaotic neutral. Sometimes you may want to be a good guy or bad guy, but you don't know your DM. So I think unless everyone just really knows everyone and you know the story of the game, I think you should have a couple of game sessions. Hit second or third level before you choose an alignment. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and we've talked about that before, where I understand the need for alignment in a lot of games, especially in games where you don't know your DM. I think that if you develop enough trust, with your DM, then alignment ceases to be useful because the DM can trust that the player will
Right.
play his character as the character, and alignment is honestly constricting in that regard, where it tries to pigeonhole you into a one-dimensional ish type character. And I'm not saying that you can't be a three-dimensional character with an alignment because you can, but
Sure,
it doesn't help the matter. You know, because in real life, people's alignments are all over the fucking place,
that's right.
right? People do all kinds of weird shit.
But you still have a core idea.
Yeah, everybody has, and that's what I'm saying. Everybody has a core kind of personality, but it's not like I stole something from this guy today, so now I'm all of a sudden my core personality has changed. I don't necessarily agree with that facet of alignment.
I think that, when I played Star Wars, I actually played more than I GM'd in Star Wars. And I think that the lack of alignment, I saw hands down more players kill players than the GM.
And but that goes back into what I was saying about synergy with the group, right?
Hmm.
If you know your players and you know your GM, everybody has the same goals. Everybody can trust each other not to fuck each other over. For the
Right.
most part, it shouldn't really be an issue.
And I still swear it's the setting, right? Because I've played a lot of Mech Warrior, a lot of BattleTech. Um, we actually created our own little ideas between, Mech Warrior and BattleTech to make an RPG out of the game. What you were out of your mech versus in your mech, you still played core BattleTech in the mech, right? Um, and you had airlocks and all that other stuff in BattleTech and Mech Warrior, but you never had people opening airlocks trying to kill each other. And I use that because it happened a lot. But in Star Wars, it seemed to happen all the time. It seems someone was always trying to, and if the illustrator of my novels is out watching this right now, Kevin, he can throw a comment down and co-sign what I'm saying.
Hmm.
People were always killing each other over. He killed half the players half the time, right? So, and it was all on the lack of alignment. A lot of times you don't realize that your alignment kind of helps you stay within the core of what you're supposed to be. So, if you're playing a tabletop RPG that does not require an alignment, highly recommend implementing one. You will and try to make sure, guys, when you're running your games, that you're playing people that are of the same breed. Meaning, you don't have four chaotic good guys, a neutral good guy, and a chaotic neutral guy who's really chaotic evil. But you wouldn't let him pick chaotic evil, so he chose chaotic neutral, right? Um, there's always a reason, guys, um, to go against to go against your alignment, and you want to say your alignment to the best you can, but you also want to be player friendly.
Right.
I played a character one time who was very cowardly. He was a wizard, enchanter, charmer, and at one point another wizard was essentially going to die. He was down, he was out, everyone was gone. And I used my last spell to save him. That was with your DMB, and I used my last spell to save him.
Before
Com-
my time.
completely went against the character, right? Completely went against the character. But my character's motives, I said, hey, now you owe me, right?
Right.
So I looked for a reason to remain party friendly when I very well could have let him die and nobody would have looked. He just made a stupid mistake.
And that's a great point you brought up. I definitely feel that playing to the story, playing to your character is as good only good as long as everyone's having fun overall. If playing your character means somebody else is just going to have a shitty time for the next 4 weeks, not a very cool thing to
Not
do, in
not
my
your best
opinion.
character, man.
Yeah. And so even you don't even need real reasons to do stuff like he's talking about. You can justify pretty much anything you're doing. It's not really that challenging. You just gotta look for a way to do it, man. Don't be that guy who's like, oh, I leave everybody out to die.
Right.
It's not fun for anyone. It's
It,
probably not fun for you. You get to say, yeah, I live, but so fucking what? The game's dead now.
yeah, and again, guys. So we're talking about why tabletop RPGs. Again, that's the core of today's episode, right? So why, when you have players that lead everyone out to die, or when you have a DM who throws rocks at you, it's twice your level after being wounded, put you between a rock and a hard place. That was actually came from someone else in one of our groups. So, Casey, if you're out there, I stole that from you. Um, but people putting you between rock and a hard place. That would have been a great name for this episode. Um, but yeah, you have to remember that at the end, it's the DM's job to tell the story, to have a story to tell, and to have a setting. So know your settings, guys. Whether you use the pre-generated Forgotten Realms, even some of the ones that are outdated now that they don't update anymore, like Athos or Dark Sun. Dark Sun's pretty neat if you like the overpowered stuff.
But
Um,
more importantly, what he's saying is awesome. But more importantly, it's important that everybody has fun. That's what this and that's what you're getting together for. You know, that's what you're doing this for. Make sure that you're creating something that's fun for everyone.
as a DM, you don't win by killing PCs, and you don't win when they fail saving throws. Eric, who's on the other side of this camera, she
You don't
has
use names.
she has the Madame Curie dice, the radioactive D20, who
Oh, did I forget to mention that she's killed me on TikTok?
but she has a radioactive die, and she tells I think our mathematician Ting told us one time that she's a statistic anomaly because she statistically rolls lower than average by a lot, right?
Mm-hmm.
And at one point, we actually, yes, we're superstitious. We actually tricked the D20 and made it thought that we needed to roll low, and it rolled high. So we were convinced it's just radioactive and out to kill us. So uh, for those of you who aren't superstitious, get superstitious. Chessex over whiz kids all the time. You don't mix
I
the
don't
two.
know. I like to
See,
roll them both at the same time.
see. I mean,
I'm a young kid. I like to live dangerously.
that's just blaspheme, right? Don't listen to the greenback. Listen to the elite. I have favored Chessex for a long time, and it's kept me alive. Um, so it's definitely a Chessex world. But no, as a DM, back on subject, praise Chessex. Back on subject. You as a DM, you need to tell an interesting story. You need to tell a story that people want to come back for, and it needs to be fun, right? So if killing your bad guys and keeping them alive is fun for them, that should be the general core. But of course, death does happen in games, depending on how long they go, and it's going to happen. But
That's what makes it a game. It's chance.
what's really neat about the tabletop RPG is you've played. I'm going to just throw an idea out there. A dwarven cleric named Alvis. You play him for a year and a half, and you defend your brethren, and you die.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Last year and a half is gone, but you chose to die heroically defending your brethren. And that's what you were talking about, right? Is by design, doing heroic things is typically fatal.
Right. I mean, like how many epic poems and tragedies. Well, I mean, they call it tragedies, right?
Yeah,
How many of these old ass stories do you read where like the hero lives to ripe old age,
to live the next day?
right? They usually do something heroic or remembered for doing that something heroic and then die doing something else heroic.
Right.
That's usually how it plays out.
So as a DM, a couple of key things you want to stay away from, right? You want to stay away from unbalanced mechanics.
Mm-hmm.
You want to make sure that your rules are consistent. You want to make sure that you know your setting and you know your plot line. You want to make sure that you know your players and you know your characters. And make sure that when you implement NPCs, bad guys that could potentially be friends, foes, or neither, that not every single one of them is 3 times as powerful as the party combined, right? DMs have a real bad problem with, oh, welcome my this NPC wizard Rija. She's 14th level because you're 6th, right? So try to stay away from that, and make sure that you remember that your game is to make sure everyone has fun. And when everyone else is having fun, that's how you win. So, and that's kind of touching on what you said. So, tabletop RPGs, you can create a dynamic character that's unique and specific to you. You will find a party of heroes or villains or treasure hunters, whatever the case may be, that will prove to be unique and create for a unique story, and you will help dictate the end of that story, right? And I think those are the major reasons why we play tabletop RPGs today. And
I just do it to get laid.
Yeah, well, that's going to be the next episode, or maybe a few later on.
How to get laid.
Hey, so
Nerd's Guide.
That's right. How to get laid in a D&D game for dummies.
I slayed her dragon.
That's right. So Hey, I had this really really pretty girlfriend one time, and we used to game at a friend of mine's house, and she used to come over. She used to say, "Hey, it was the funniest thing, right?" So I would
Are you
say,
sure it
"Hey."
just wasn't another dude with long hair like that? I mean, you're kind of
Yeah, it was a
ladylike.
guy with long hair, but I said she,
Oh,
and it's a
okay.
she. No, so she was a lot younger than me, and she wanted to go do something, go out or something. And I said, okay, well, I'm going to start this D&D game. She thought I was lying, right? She didn't think it was real. And the more I talked about it, the more she just said if I was going to lie, it needed to be believable. So she goes over to my friend Z's house with us, and she decides she's going to cook, right? So before she cooks for everybody, she decides she's going to get dressed for a bunch of nerds sitting around a table playing D&D, right? So, needless to say, not a lot got done. She wore a bunch of skimpy stuff, and everyone kind of gawked at her for 6 to 8 hours. So, guys out there with pretty girlfriends, go have them find them something else to do. Do not bring your significant other to the game. Throw stuff off, right? And then when you guys get in a fight at home, I lose my fighter and my cleric, right? So I can't have that, right? And if we're in Mech Warrior, and you're in a 65-ton catapult, and she's in the Atlas, I'm counting on that 65-ton catapult and that Atlas showing up. And you can't not show up because she was being a bitch. You know what I mean? So, because her being a bitch just got me killed. And that's not fair.
That's right.
So, make sure that your significant others, unless you just enjoy playing games together, right? There's very few that are like that. But um, I typically do not bring significant others to the game. It's problematic, and most of the time they don't believe that that's what you're doing anyway. So let them show up, let them see that you're a nerd, and then let them go on about their business, right? Um, my ex girlfriend never believed me. I was either, she's like, wait a minute, and there was a time where I used to travel and fight full time, and I had my D&D group travel with me. My buddy Josh was like the main guy, right?
Hmm.
And he'd keep me awake, driving half asleep at the wheel. We'd get to the hotel room. We'd get a good 4 hour session in, go to sleep next day, fight or compete. And so there's a way to do it, but you keep the significant other away from the game, right? The guy or girl will ruin it. They'll ruin it every time, guaranteed.
How do you
Um,
feel about married people playing together?
it depends on how long they've been married, I think, right? If they've been married a long time, they've already learned how to put up with each other, you're probably safe.
It's probably a quick way for divorce too,
You're
I
probably
bet.
you're probably yeah. You stole treasure from me. That's it. It's over. Right. Right. That's the last time you take my +2 long sword. You're getting the papers, and I'm staying in the game. You find another one.
That's
Um, but anything. Actually, guys, I hope everyone, including us, learned something. Throw some comments down. Let us know what you think. If you have any questions, this was our first episode, Borderline Trial Run. We're gonna come back in what, 2 weeks?
2 weeks.
So we're gonna come back 2 weeks, same time, 6 to 7:30 ish. We live by the ish around here, but no,
Depends on how wasted we are.
that's right. Six to 7:30 Central Standard Time. Shoot us some comments. Send us some questions. What you guys think? What you want to hear us talk about, or why you think we're bumbling idiots, or why you think we are what's actual fact geniuses,
That's right.
right? So
So feel free to send some questions to him and let him tell you why you're wrong
that's
for
right.
about 4 hours. He'll be happy to do it. He has nothing better to do with his day.
Hey, and I'm willing to let every one of our watchers know how wrong they are.
Oh yeah.
On multiple occasions. Don't think you're limited to one comment or question, right? Because Garrett, you're probably wrong in a lot of places, I think. So no, I'm kidding, guys. But yeah, send us comments, questions, what you want to hear about, how we can improve our show.
And I know we talked a lot about D&D today. And as the show goes along, we'll be focusing on other games, obviously, because we want to focus on the genre as a whole. From like Burning Wheel to Traveler, all that good stuff. So yeah, so definitely expect some other games to start coming up in different topics as we move along.
We're gonna start. We're gonna start having some guests on here. If we can finagle it to happen, maybe even get Erica on here, or or
It's
maybe
not the right finger to put up in
uh,
response to that. That was rude.
she's clearly very excited. Maybe even DMA or DMB, right? So, in their defense, they did a lot of. I was on both those games. They did a lot of things. DMB in particular asked me to be a part of his games to help kind of coach him along. Um, and most of the time, he tried to follow my advice, but then he would take the idea of the followed advice and then just kind of branch off with it, right?
You try to create something new.
And he would try to create something new. So, guys, remember that we are playing tabletop RPGs because we like the atmosphere. You can create new friends, new social groups can be created, have been created by them, and we're playing them because we want to dictate the end of the story. We don't want a packaged, produced story ending, right? We want to know what happens based on our actions. We're playing tabletop RPGs because of the commitment, right? If you can't wrestle, you can't fight, you can't play football, you can't run track, can't swim, or any of those things, or sports just isn't your thing. But you feel like you can commit, right? One of the things a lot of guys say is, "Oh, I'm committed to Thursday night raids," right? Not exactly the same thing. Okay, it's just not. So if you're one of those guys out there saying that that's the same thing, you're wrong. You're wrong. I'm telling you you're wrong, and I'm glad that you can't rebuttal that right here. And if you send that in a comment, I'm going to ignore it. Um, but thanks, guys.
I think you're about to get an angry comment.
That's right. So if you guys are on one of the Facebook pages, Dritz Duerden, Drizzt, however you say it. I know there's a million ways to say it. I say Dritz. So if you're on the Dritz Duerden page, the role playing tabletop games page, the D&D Next page, I do appreciate you guys for letting me to blast you guys with this live stream. If you get a chance, guys, go to Amazon.com. Just type in my name, Dallas S. Pascal. My books will come up if you're interested. If you read the fantasy genre. Um, Outside of that, I think I just lost my co-host. Finally, thank you, Chessex. Thank you, Chessex. I rolled a nat 20 on that. Hold on one second, guys. We have technical support in the back asking questions. What's going on? Oh, sweet. The co-host actually did something good, right? So this is my second book, Medieval, the Book of War. It follows the Book of Loss, and following the Book of War is just recently came out, Medieval, the Book of Blood. They can all be found on Amazon. Easiest way to do it